All right. This is for the students. Everybody's out there. This is Anthony Sosinski and John Aldridge. They're both captains of the Anna Mary. Is that right?
Yep, Anna Mary.
And they're lobstermen out at Montauk Point. John and Anthony are the two captains that were in the films that we watched about their adventures out at sea and their awesome story about rescue and recovery. So I'm going to turn it over to John and Anthony. They're out in Montauk, guys, on their boat, and they're going to take it away. And then what I would like for you to do, the students, is I would like for you to please text me your messages through the Google Meet. And then when John and Anthony get towards the end of what they want to say, maybe we can ask some questions. John?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. All right, guys, take it away.
All right, hey guys, how you been? Hope you're, hanging in there with this whole crazy world we're living in at the moment. But yeah, we're lobstermen out here in Montauk, and I guess you heard a little bit about our story. We fish about 800 traps, about 6 miles south of here, for us, and it's about a 9-hour ride out for us every time we leave. And the night that we were leaving for when I got into my accident, it was a normal day just like this. We left at 8 o'clock at night, and because, by the time we leave at 8 o'clock at night, by the time we get there, it's daylight, and then we start fishing. So we left at, 8 o'clock at night. We got bait, we got fuel, we got ice, and off we went. And usually we keep one person awake on the ride out, and the 2 people sleep, and we rotate through the night. On that night, we were, it was a new, it was hot, the water's hot in the summertime, so we were using our new refrigeration system. So I was busy getting that ready on the boat, moving stuff around, and I used one of these hooks right here, and it's got a handle on it, and I hooked the cooler. And as I was pulling on that cooler to get it off one of our hatches, to get access to it, the handle broke on the cooler, and I went flying off the back of the boat because our boat doesn't have what they call a stern, the back to it. It's all lobster traps.
Can we see the back of the boat so we know what you're talking about?
Sure, we got a lot of traps on it, but let me walk back a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, you can.
This is
come back a little bit.
It's on the boat now. We didn't have this tailgate on at the time. This goes back and goes down like a pickup truck's back, and this was open. And as John was pulling on that cooler, he went off the back of the boat.
Right. And then after that happened, of course, you can imagine freaking out that you're in the water and you can't believe that, that you just, today's the day you're going to die, I basically was about to drown because I exerted so much energy that I was panicking that I realized my boots were pretty buoyant. They were very buoyant, my boots. And
we're busy right now, Bruce.
So I was, I had these boots on, and I figured, I was drowning. So let me take the boot off. I put one under each arm like this, a little easier in the water maybe, and I was floating because I had taken them and emptied the water out and pushed them back into the water and got air inside here. So that created some buoyancy. So with that, I was floating about this high out of the water. And
okay.
And
I hate to interrupt, but whoever's holding the camera, can you just walk back a little bit from John and Anthony? It's hard to see. Yeah, great.
That's good. That's good. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Okay.
So, where was I? I was
floating around.
I was floating with the buoys right up, with the boots immediately, and you're like, I wasn't dying at that second. So then I got a little chance to think and assess the situation and realize, wow, I messed up really big time right now. You know, this is the biggest mistake of my life. The boat's on autopilot. They're all asleep. And no one knows I'm missing right now. So it became a real mental game, trying to stay cool and calm and not totally freak out and panic. And within a couple of, hours of that, I had 2 sharks swimming around me. We were trying to, I was just trying to figure out what I should do. How do you deal with, oh my God, the shark's in the water right next to you, and so I pulled out my little pocket knife, my trusty old pocket knife, and I sat there with my boots under my arms and the knife, and then I realized this little knife really isn't going to do anything. So I was just calming my breathing and calming my, the whole thing, just trying to not panic so that they wouldn't come near me. And eventually they swam away. So that was really, really scary, because you're in the water at night, you can't even imagine. So then I said to myself, I just got to stay awake till daylight. And then, Anthony will wake up and the Coast Guard will be, he'll call the Coast Guard, and, hopefully that, that was my focus, to think positive towards that instead of where I was at the moment and how bad it really was, because it just was so overwhelming. So daylight comes, and I hear way, way off in the distance. It's probably 3 hours now in the dark, 2 hours. And I hear way off in the distance a helicopter pat. And then I knew he was awake. And I knew that, he was going to call the Coast Guard. He was going to freak out that I wasn't on the boat and call the Coast Guard and be like, where the hell's John? So that's when Anthony woke up, and he'll tell you what happened in the beginning of that.
So the scenario for me is quite different. We have a crew member. So John and I, like John had said, we fish far offshore. A long time to get out there. So like we take turns on who's got wheel watch. Our other crew member, Mike, was supposed to have been woken up by John because it would be his turn. So Mike wakes me up to tell me something's on the boat. You wake up from a not quite sound sleep, but you're asleep, and then you're being told that someone's not on the boat. So as I jump out of the bunk room and run upstairs to see what he's talking about, John is not on board the boat. And it's at that moment in time, knowing where our boat is compared to where land is, I know that he's screwed. He's so screwed right now, no matter where he is. And I turned the boat around and got headed back towards land. Phoned the Coast Guard, start explaining to them that, where I am and that John got on board. And a few minutes into it, other friends from out on the ocean, because of where we fish, there's a lot of boats from different states because the ocean is large, but once you start getting out further offshore, each state has their different boats that fish out there. So I'm getting phone calls from friends from Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts that are fishing kind of in the area, wanting to know where I think he fell overboard. And at that moment, I still didn't even know how he fell over, but I knew he wasn't on board the boat. So I'm really sweating at this point because I know John since we were little boys. We had been, I ate out of his mom's refrigerator, and, he's a brother to me. And for him to not be there, it starts to weigh on you. But I never thought that he was dead because I wouldn't be looking for somebody that was dead. So my concentration and focus was more on where he fell over and how he fell over. But the Coast Guard is now trying to get information from me, and they ask questions, including they ask me things like, is he a good swimmer, and I'm trying to stay positive. I'm like, well, he can surf, and he's very resourceful, and I'm really just trying to keep them in focus on, please find my friend. And I was begging for an aircraft because I had fished offshore a long time in my life, and I knew that the only way for them to get out there in any quick time is to send a plane or a helicopter. So as I'm begging them for a helicopter and a plane, please send that, my other friends are going, please, where do you think he is? So the Coast Guard tells me that they can't join in the search based on they're not in the military. So we have our own civilian fleet looking for John.
Which is like 20 boats.
So our town, which consists of fishermen, and this stuff is, we don't know this because I'm on my boat looking for him. He's in the water trying to keep his lips above water. And there's a whole backstory behind it with the Coast Guard station and the Coast Guard in our town. But I'll let John get to how he kept his lips above water at this point.
So now it's daylight. I hear the helicopter. I know that they're out at least looking for me, but they're totally not looking in the right spot. They're way, way far away. So, okay, I'm still in survival mode. I gotta come up with a plan. So my goal was to live until daylight. I got there. Now I set another goal for myself. I said, I gotta find a buoy. I knew where I was in the ocean relative to, where I fell in. I knew there were more buoys around me. So I, come up on a wave, and I'm looking, and then you come down, you can't see anything, you back up on a wave, and I'm looking, and finally I see way off in the distance, I see a buoy. And I said, all right, let me swim towards it. So I start swimming as hard as I can with my boots under my arms. I'm swimming one hand, and then I'd stop and take 15-minute breaks, and then I'd take another paddle, and I'd swim. Again, 15 minutes, rotate, and finally, eventually, I got to where the buoy, it's like one of these big orange balls, and I finally get there, and I realize it's like having a balloon. I can't get on top of it. It's not really doing anything to me. So I sat there for a little while, and I realized, all right, the helicopter's going back and forth to the west of me. I'm sitting on this buoy right now, and all right, what do I do? I'm like, they're not seeing me. And meanwhile, Anthony had passed me with the boat already. He didn't see me. Another lobster boat had passed me during that time, didn't see me. So I'm like, all right, I got to get more in the area where they think I am. So I said, let me cut the buoy. I took my little knife out. I cut that buoy off. I tied it around my wrist. And I had the boots under my arms with that buoy as visibility. And I said, let me get more in the direction of where the helicopter is. They were more to the west of me. So I said, all right, I'm going to go with the waves, and I'm going to go towards the search. And, hours go by trying to make that happen to get to the next buoy. I have this big giant ocean sunfish that swim up next to me, probably 500-pound beast of an animal, big fin like about that tall, come out of the water right next to me. And I thought it was a shark, but luckily it was a sunfish when they only have a little mouth like that. So that scared the crap out of me. And then so then, in the whole time, you're thinking, today's the day you're going to die. How do you deal with that? And that just kept bringing me down and thinking about my family and thinking about, who's going to get my dog when I die, like all of those thoughts. So what I did was I just said, I can't think about that stuff no more. I just have to think about the positive stuff, because every time I thought about the negative stuff, it just really made me feel bad and weak. And that day I needed as much strength as I could have. So I just focused on the positive end of it, saying, okay, at least they're still looking for me. At least the Coast Guard's still here. Anthony's still looking. Everybody's going. So I just turned all of that negative stuff into positive. And eventually I saw another buoy, and I had gotten to it, and they tied the two of those big orange balls together, and I sat in between them. And I said, well, I guess this is where I'm going to stay for the day, until the night, because I didn't want to get back in the open ocean again. I figured my best bet was to stay on a buoy, because anybody who was going to be looking for me would only think I would be able to survive if I was hanging onto a buoy. So it's just these things of as being a fisherman. You know these things and how other people might think and stuff like that. So you know, so then Anthony's, you know, meanwhile, he's been talking to the Coast Guard the whole time and the 20 other boats and trying to come up with a plan where I might be.
So I started with, I had to process why he wasn't on the boat and where he could have went. So as I'm analyzing our boat, because our boat isn't all too big, one of our lobster tanks I noticed was open and the tank was full of water. So my job from that moment on was still trying to figure out where he fell overboard. And when I realized this lobster tank was full of water and the other lobster tank was full of water and these pumps that we have filling them up were on, I just put I processed it and I said, well, he has to be working on our lobster tanks and our refrigeration system. And that was my first clue of where to start looking for him. As John and I work on the boat, we have different chores that we've given each other just based on how it goes. And one of the things after installing this refrigeration is John knew more about it than I did. So he didn't wake up our other crew member, Mike, or myself based on him just saying, I got to keep this, you know, fix this, not even so much fix the refrigeration,
make sure it works,
but working on it properly. So through a conversation, I realized that we should have filled up these tanks 2 hours prior to getting to the fishing grounds. And 2 hours prior to the fishing grounds at our slow boat, he gave me a general area where he could have fell overboard. And then I found the handle of the broken cooler, and I matched it up, and I realized that that handle was on the cooler, and it gave me a key point to search for. And that's where I had the volunteer fleet looking. And still, it's all a guess, and I didn't know where he really fell overboard, but it was the best guess that I could do. And the Coast Guard was basically, you know, using the information that I was giving them because they didn't know anything. But we knew one thing was John was still trying to stay alive, and we had to find him, and time was running out. So
then, you know, so now I'm sitting on that buoy for hours now, and I'm, you know, wondering what to do. Do I leave? I'm like, I feel into myself, I'm like, I know it took us, you know, 9 hours to get here, but if I took 20 hours, I could probably swim back to Jersey at least, right? You know, I was like,
delusional.
I was like, I feel, you know, like Superman here, but I said, no, don't do that. Stay on the buoy, because in case I do die, I could tie myself to it. And my friend who owned the buoys, he would know, you know, at least I made it this far. He'd tell the Coast Guard, at least my family would have my body.
It's attached to lobster traps.
You know, so they would know where to find me and at least know that I made it this far or whatever it was, you know. So, but, so as that's all going through my head and, you know, you're just trying to stay strong, and now I'm starting to feel a little cold. I've been in the water now 11 hours. I mean, you can't even imagine that. I mean, it's like, imagine waking up in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, going in your swimming pool and staying there till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, in the deep end. And that's just your pool with no sharks and nothing, right? So it takes a lot out of you. So, and plus I was craving a cheeseburger really bad. So then all of a sudden I look and I see the Coast Guard jet go by really fast and really, really relatively close and low on the water. And I thought maybe the pilot had seen me. And I knew he was going to be coming back in another pattern, another direction. So I was waiting and watching. And eventually he came back. And I thought he had seen me. So I had a little hope there. I was like, wow, all right, maybe, you know, they got jets out here. Holy cow, you know. And I guess within another hour after that, I look and here comes a big, giant white helicopter coming straight towards me. And I start taking the boots and flapping and screaming and yelling and splashing. And all of a sudden, he turns and stops right above me. And that wash is just unbelievable, the force of those propellers. So I had to, like, hide myself. So at that point, I knew that they'd see me. And I knew, all right, you can't look at them because it's like bullets hitting you, that water. So I just covered myself up, and I stayed on the buoys, and I was keeping my back to them. And then all of a sudden, I hear the rescue swimmer swims up to me and taps me on the shoulder and says, sir, are you okay? And I spun around, I looked at him, and I said, I got 2 more days left in me. Let's get the hell out of here. And so he was very surprised, and he realized that I wasn't in the panic, freak out mode, and that enabled him to assess my situation and how I was. And within a couple of seconds, the rescue basket landed right next to me. I mean, it was amazing, the professionalism of the Coast Guard, how accurate they are and how much they practice it. They're really unbelievable. And so he rolls me into the basket, and my boots start floating away. And I told him, I need those boots. They saved my life. And he didn't know what to do because you're not allowed to really have any objects in the basket like that. So he grabbed them and he put them under my feet and said, hold on. And as I went up, I'm not sure how high I went up, but it was the scariest ride of my life. That's for sure. Well, one of the scariest. And I closed my eyes. Once I got into the helicopter, they pulled me in, and the pilot put his mask back. And, he's like, you got some will to live. We've been looking for you, for 9 hours today. And I said, I've been looking for you for 12 hours. I'm glad you found me. And then he said that he couldn't take me back to Montauk. And I said, I don't care where you take me, as long as you just get me, out of this water here. So they took me to Cape Cod, got in an ambulance. My core temperature was 94 degrees. My second degree rate, my tongue, my lips, severely hypothermic. And I get back to semi-normal, medically wise, and then that's it. We went home, and then it just got crazy with the news and everybody and the world finding out about it. It was amazing how many people my experience touched that day. So very humbling, and that's the story. So, what kind of questions do you guys have?
Can you hear me, John? Anthony, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to read off some of the questions that they texted in to me.
Okay.
One of the first ones is, Anthony, how did you feel? How did you get the news that John was alive and well, and how did you feel?
So I had been talking to the helicopter pilot on Channel 22 on the VHF, and I was talking to the Coast Guard on Channel 16, and I was talking to the volunteer fleet on Channel 1. So the Coast Guard helicopter had called me on Channel 22, and the pilot had instructed and told me that we found your partner, John, and he's alive.
Yeah, so when I got in the helicopter, I said to the pilot, first I said, does my mother know about this? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh God, she's going to kill me. So then you got to call my boat. You got to tell them, that I'm good. And so he's like, go ahead, put the headset on. I put the headset on, and then he tells Anthony what happened, and then the whole radio exploded. All the boats that were listening, and it was just amazing how many people erupted that moment when he had told them that I was alive. So.
Anthony, I have a follow-up to that question. When were you and John reunited? When you guys first saw each other?
I did not go to the hospital in Massachusetts. He was back the next day.
Okay.
And so I saw him like 24 hours after he had been back.
They asked, how did you feel at that moment?
Well, I hugged him, and it was a relief. I mean, it was it was by far the largest relief that I had at that moment in time that he was alive.
Right. Cool.
And it wasn't
go ahead.
Surprise. It was more of, this is over.
Well, I think they asked that question. I'm just guessing, though, but I think they asked that question because you said you couldn't think of him as dead.
Yeah. Well, you don't look for your dead dog, do you, when it runs away? you're told that your dog had been run over on 27, you're always looking for the dog.
Right.
So, you know, it's not even an animal, it's your best friend.
Right.
So you don't want to believe they're dead until someone says, hey, we found his body.
Right. So you weren't going to change your mind on that position.
Well, you don't. Well, I mean, you don't want to, when they would call off the search, then that's a different issue. But we had, we had plenty of fuel on board. We had other boats that we knew were coming out with big spotlights. We were engrossed in the search for him at that moment in time when he was found.
The Coast Guard helicopter was on their last pass because they've been in the air so long and they lost all their fuel, so they were going home. So they asked Anthony, where, give us the Hail Mary. And he's like, go far south as you can go. They were, and on that last pass, they saw me.
The 22 boats were each a half a mile apart. We had an 11-mile wide grid moving east because that's the direction the current was moving. So each boat, when they got to a certain point, would steam to the east point of the search pattern and then head their way back north again. So we would try to stay with this chunk of water because the water is what he was in. It's not so much as where he fell overboard because the ocean's moving. So, but he was holding on to a buoy which was attached to the ocean bottom, so he wasn't drifting. So we don't know this until he tells us this later on.
Were you surprised of the other fishermen joining in the search, or is that kind of what everybody does in your business?
Everybody, that's just, there's no one else out there to help you except each other. So we're, when it comes to that, fishermen don't even think twice about that. They drop everything they do.
Okay. John, I don't know if you, John, this is Professor Stout. There's some questions in
Hold on, we have a plane going
box.
by. We got a plane going by, Nancy.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is?
Okay, John Stout, you're muted. John Stout, you're muted. John Stout, you're muted.
John, something's muted.
Professor Stout, you're muted.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Now we can. Okay, so there's some questions in the little.
Yeah, I see him. Here you go. This one is from Skylar. How had Hurricane Sandy and now the pandemic affect you both as lobstermen and the people living out in Montauk?
Our markets aren't there anymore, so because there's no restaurants open, and people aren't, buying lobster and crab on the regular like they used to. So we had to rely on social media, putting it out there, let people know, friends and family, and other people who know us, that, we have fresh products for sale. So that's how it affected us. And, our town is very quiet now, too, the whole pandemic going on. So there's not much business going on. So we're trying to squeeze by.
Financially, our town is struggling right now. It's a tourist town. Every store, whether it's a retail store or a restaurant, every aspect of the whole town is in big trouble right now financially. And it trickles down to us. So that's where we're at. But we're doing it. We're gotta change up. That's fishermen. That's what we do anyway. So this won't put us out of business. It'll just make us reinvent ourselves again. We'll be stronger from it at the end.
All right. Whoever has the mic open, guys, for the students, whoever has a mic open, make sure you guys are on mute because we're getting a lot of feedback. All right, well, I have another question, guys. What keeps you guys motivated to continue to do your job despite all these difficulties?
We don't work for anybody.
It was like going on an adventure every time we go. Every single trap we had 800. Every time you lift one up, it's like, what's in that thing? It's like, wow. So it keeps you interested like that. Plus, our office, we have whales going by, we have dolphins, we have all kinds of sea life. And, we see stuff a lot of people never get to see, and it's amazing. It's a great way to exist.
We chose a job that we never go to work, and that's my advice to everybody listening: is choose a profession that doesn't feel like work, and you'll never go to work. You want to go to work, and it's okay. The best day of your life to be at work. Mm-hmm. It's okay. I hate going to work, and I don't want to do the wrong job. You don't do that job. If your parents want you to do that job, don't do it. Don't listen to them.
Don't become a fisherman either.
Don't go to work to make money. The money will come later on.
Have you ever wanted to quit? Either one of you or both of you?
I have once when I lost friends. I had a friend of mine's boat sink that I had given life raft to in the morning, and he had a little son the same age as my daughter Melanie at the time, and after searching for his body and not finding the boat on the bottom, I quit fishing for almost a year, went to work for King Cullen's supermarket in the fish department, and then decided it was time to go back fishing. Like, pulling me too loud.
How about you, John?
No, I mean, it's fishing in some sort of way always all my life, so just it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. Everything that we do in our life revolves around this, what I mean? Whether it's someone's getting married or there's a funeral or something, it's like, well, we gotta go fishing, so it's like, so it's really weird like that, but no, it's just the way to be,
Yeah, I agree with Anthony's advice and your advice that do what you love and the money will follow.
Yeah.
And if you love what you do, you never go to work, and it becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of your identity.
Exactly.
And there's nothing. It's nothing wrong with not being the richest person on the block either. That's okay. You don't need the best car. You just need the car to get you to the store. You need something reliable, though.
Has the lobster business? We know that the lobster business on Long Island has been decimated. How is it out further in the ocean?
Well, that's why we fish so far out, because it is better than it is inshore for us. So we chose, and plus we have a certain permit that allows us to be in the furthest part of the ocean, and that's the most productive. So far, the most productive part of the ocean for the lobster and the crab. So
it almost seems like that part of the earth has chosen to be away from pollution. Mm-hmm. And the further that you're away from pollution, the better off the seafood thrives. So when you're 50 to 100 miles from land, you have Gulf Stream water coming in and influence from the cold water currents, and it seems to be cleaner water. When you're up in the Long Island Sound and you have all the runoffs from everywhere else, that nature is losing the battle.
Mm. What happens? One student asked, "What happens when you catch a dolphin or a seal or something that you don't want to catch? What happens to it?"
We
very rarely catch marine mammals in our
They're too smart. They're too smart.
We only have a single rope that
we'll
goes
catch
to
a
the
shark
bottom.
once in a while. So once in a while we'll catch a shark that's tangled in say somebody's out shark fishing and they cut the line and there's line hanging out of their mouth or something. That'll get tangled with one of our buoys or something like that, and we'll catch a shark. Most of the time they're dead. But one time we had a really, really big shark that was tangled like that, and that was, you're like, wow, that thing lives out here. So, yeah, for the most part, they're too smart for it.
Besides your experience in July of 2013, have there been other moments when you have had close calls and things like that? Tough times?
Other than cutting my finger off. You could see that tip of my finger. Mm. Afterwards, a couple of years afterwards, I guess I could attest it to the PTSD, not thinking I had anything wrong with me. I never had a dream about what happened to me or anything like that or any nightmares, but I guess it all came to a head. That one summer I had gotten 30 stitches. I cut the tip of my finger off. I had a circular saw incident with another finger, and I had cut myself with a knife, sharpening it. So it was like I've never, ever gotten hurt in my whole, basically never really got hurt in my whole fishing career. And then all of a sudden that one summer, everything just kept happening. So I guess that was my focus really wasn't there. And, that's what happened to me.
Did this incident shaken either one of yours confidence in your abilities as fishermen, lobstermen?
No. After doing this stuff for 25 years, we don't even have to talk to each other. Everybody knows, everybody knows what they got to do and how it gets done and everything. And, the only way you lose confidence is Mother Nature never does the same thing. It's never the same as last year. It's never the same as it used to be. It's always changing. So you live in that mode of switching it up on the regular.
For sure, more confident being out on the ocean than on land.
Mm-hmm.
On land. Even the variables of like getting pulled over by the police for doing nothing wrong other than maybe you forgot your signal is like, that's what goes on in my head when I drive. But out on the ocean, even if we get boarded by the Coast Guard, they're only checking us for safety stuff, which if you have all your stuff, the Coast Guard is somebody you call when you're in danger or you need help. So being out on the ocean is like we're in our own element.
Mm-hmm. John, I have this is a kind of a deep question. So do you know about mindfulness, and did you practice it before you fell in, I guess? And do you practice it now? Meditation, mindfulness, stuff like that, they asked.
No, I didn't. But as a fisherman, you train yourself to try to be prepared for situations at hand. And so all my life, like I said, growing up, and having a place in Vermont and going on hikes for miles and miles in the woods and the mountains and trying, just to not try to get lost, but not getting lost and being aware of your surroundings, being all that stuff. That gave me peace of mind. And the older you get, the more you get that comfort in yourself. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, I had taken a course, that basically was like going to college for yourself, and that helped me a lot. With the voices in your head that always tell you, don't do that bad thing, do that good thing, do the bad thing. So it's like those things, just the self-help kind of thing, and it's just keeping positive is really the thing that matters. Being in the moment and staying positive.
John, this is going to be, and Anthony, this is going to be the last question because they have to go to another class. But okay. I combined two questions. Do either one of you or both of you believe this happened for a reason? And what is next for the team of John and Anthony?
I don't know if everything happens for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess for us maybe, the reason is that we can get our story out there on a positive note, and that we could put the message out that the day I was missing and I was dying that day on the ocean, I had no hope. There was no hope that I was going to live because, for the most part, no one falls off the boat at night in the middle of the ocean, and that's ever really been found. So the positive that we can give to people and tell them that, listen, I had no hope, but the way I thought about the situation at the time was strictly thinking about the positive aspect of it and moving it forward with that and the power of it. And it really actually, in the end of it, me living, coming through it, I was able to prove that it does work, mm-hmm. On a crazy scale like that, So
See, and I don't know if it happened for a reason, but I know that some things' reasons are how the outcome of the future happens. So by this happening, it maybe gives John a different look on life. It also gives me a different look on life. And we're not here forever. And if you take a step back most of the time and analyze what you're doing before you do it, you might not get hurt or killed. Mm-hmm. So I think that by him going overboard maybe makes me think a little bit more when I walk the rails of the boat at 2 o'clock in the morning and no one's awake, or I climb up in the rigging to fix a light bulb, that maybe either I should put a safety line on, I should wake somebody up, not just think you're invincible, because we're not.
Yeah. They want to know, this is the last part, they want to know, before I ask this, I just want to say I thank you guys very much. This was very insightful on many different levels. And I know the students really appreciate it, because they wouldn't have stayed this long if they didn't like what you were doing. But what's next for you guys? How?
So we have the book, that's out, Speck in the Sea, and we have a big Hollywood movie deal in the works. But with this pandemic going on, everything's on hold, obviously. So look for us eventually. We're going to have a big movie out, and maybe you guys can be like, oh, we saw them guys. We know them. But, yeah, Hollywood's in the works doing something with us. So,
but you're going to
stay tuned.
You're still going to be working the waters until then.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's where I was going with that is when we did sign up for this Hollywood thing, if we would have just lived our life like we have a Hollywood movie contract, we got a book in the works, we would be out of business right now. But we decided...
It sounds a lot better than what it really is, but maybe someday it will be better. But
we basically decided to stay making money the way we were making money, and saying that when this does happen, it's going to be our retirement money, not let's live off of what's going on, because it's all promises until it actually happens 100%. So you can't,
just like life. So
you can't forget how you make your money, and how you got to where you are.
Mm-hmm. But keep an eye out for the movie, and it should be good.
It will happen.
Yeah. Will you guys continue to do what you're doing now, even after the movie comes out, or are you thinking about
retiring? Yeah.
Don't take the guitar away from the guitarist. Okay? He won't be, or she won't be a musician anymore.
That's right, my man. All right, listen, you hit up to 40 students. You hit up to 40, so that's a pretty high number. And
nice.
We're still at 34, so you did a great job, guys. We really appreciate your time,
great
John,
talking
Anthony.
to you guys.
We really appreciate your story. And I really hope that next year, the students who come in next year will be able to see you in person.
Yes, yes, we do. Hope that will happen.
All right.
Well, why don't you plan a road trip to Montauk with the students and have lunch on the dock?
Yeah, that would be. Believe me, I would take that in a second if I could justify.
We could have crab pours for everybody.
We'll supply the crabs and lobsters if you guys come out.
That sounds like a perfect day to me. All right,
you're gonna have to come out with the cocktail sauce in the lobster roll.
It sounds good. Thanks, fellas. We really appreciate it. Be safe and peace.
Thank you.
Dr. Stat, if you can, I'm going to get you on your phone.
Bye, guys.
Okay?
Thank you.
I'm going to call Dr. Stat on the phone.
That sounds good. Hey, fellas, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks a million.
It's getting good.